Okay, we're in there. All right. I'll count us down and then we can get rolling. All right. Three, two, one. Greg Smith here, national recruiting analyst with Rivals.com. And it is a big day for Kansas State. So I am joined by Kevin Fielder of emailonline.com. Kevin, thanks for joining me, man.
Absolutely, huge day for K-State recruiting, and I think that this might be one of Chris Kleiman's biggest wins in charge of K-State.
Yeah, and that big win that we're referring to, of course, is Linkon Cure, the four-star tight end out of Goodland, Kansas, who has committed to Kansas State. Just an enormous win for Kansas State on the recruiting trail. As you know, the official visits that he took to Kansas, Texas A&M, and Oregon, and also, of course, to Kansas State as well, as those are the schools that Kansas State won out and had to beat out for his services. I guess, Kevin, for you, when do you think that this whole thing really kind of crystallized in Kansas State's favor?
Yeah, I had heard earlier on in the process that K-State was sort of the overwhelming favorite for him. And you always say that, like, I always say that we need to see how the official visits pan out. And, there was obviously buzz for Texas A&M and Oregon after their official visits.
Mhm.
But I think that the weekend official visit solidified everything for Lincoln. K-State pulled out all the stops for him. They took him golfing. It was not your typical official visit where you spend hours in a meeting room with the coaches. He's already
Right.
done all that. He doesn't need to do it again. So it was really that final full court press. And I think that really solidified, where K-State stood and sort of helped Lincoln make that decision to commit to K-State.
Yeah, and I think that this is also one where it feels to me a lot like a recruitment last year that I was involved with closely, that Carter Nelson at Nebraska, where it feels like for that one that Nebraska was the big favorite going in, and there were other teams that you're looking at, like in that case it was Notre Dame, in this case it's Oregon and Texas A&M, where you're like, okay, I can kind of see why he would go there. I kind of understand what was going on, but you still have kind of that home state feel and that home state pull, and all those relationships that you had built at that in-state school. Then I think that was a really big deal in this recruitment for Linkon Cure, is that it always felt to me that he just, every time you spoke to him about Kansas State, he just felt so comfortable with everything going on there. And they've got some really good stuff going on, though. Chris Kleiman has built that program nicely. And I think that people, and it's funny, you laugh, and it's because I think that when people have from a 10,000-foot view have kind of looked at this recruitment, it's like, oh, why would you go to Kansas State? And then you kind of really have to peel a layer of the onion back to realize that they've been good, number one. Number two, they're kind of on the rise, right? Chris Kleiman is a well-respected, good coach. You've got a quarterback in Avery Johnson, who a lot of people are excited about. You bring Dylan Edwards back home to be a part of that backfield as well. Like, there's a lot going on there at Kansas State that would make him want to choose them as well. So it's just, that comfort level and all those trips that he took to Kansas State. And I love the stuff that you heard coming out of that visit for the official visit, the photos of him playing golf with the team, the quotes that he gave you guys about Chris Kleiman being an awesome golfer. Like, it just felt like it was just kind of a cherry on top of everything to push it over the finish line for Linkon Cure.
Yeah, I think that as you sort of mentioned, K-State just felt comfortable to him. And he had always
Mhm.
told me that, K-State was home, right? And he
Right.
had said those words to me before, that K-State was home, and K-State was first on his recruitment a year ago at a prospect camp, and they've never sort of wavered in that recruitment. And I think that's huge because, you look at some of the coaching changes, they lost their offensive coordinator to Texas A&M and Colin Klein,
Right.
and Texas A&M came in guns blazing after
Oh
that,
yeah.
and K-State were still able to hold them off. And I think that speaks to what the rest of that coaching staff, Taylor Brait, the director of recruiting, Chris Kleiman, Brian LePack, Connor Riley, what all those guys did. And then when Matt Wells was able to come in and sort of solidify it, it's a huge recruiting win in that sense because, you fight off some major Power Four programs for them. And, not only fight them off, but fight off full court presses from those
Right.
programs as well.
Yeah, this was not Oregon, Texas A&M did not dip their toe in the water of this recruitment. They went all
Yeah.
in on trying to win this recruitment. And anytime that you can win something like that, it's just such a huge deal, not only for this one particular prospect, which it is a big deal, but it is also a big deal for Chris Kleiman moving forward within the state, right? I think that that's something that's important to note too, is that there's a lot of really good players in Kansas, both in this year's cycle in 25 and in 26 as well. Again, for Chris Kleiman to be able to go to those kids and say, hey, you do not need to go outside of this state to play big time college football. Look at what we've done with keeping some of these guys home. Linkon Cure being the most recent one. You can stay home and be effective and have a really fulfilling college experience. I think that will be big time for him on the trail going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the biggest thing is, you're not only just landing good recruits, you're landing the top recruits, right? Avery Johnson, Dylan Edwards, a little bit of a different situation with him
Yeah.
going to Colorado initially. And then Linkon Cure. These are great football players. These are, potential NFL talents. And, you're landing them over other Power Five programs. And you're not just landing, the very talented players who don't hold the major Power Four offers, but these guys
Right.
did, and these were programs that were fighting for them, as you mentioned, not just dipping their toes in and seeing what happens from there.
Now on the field, switching gears just a bit with Linkon Cure, like one of the things that has always stuck out to me about him is, first of all, I think that he's got a lot of untapped potential. I think that even as highly rated as we have him at this point, and we do have him as the 54th best player in the country, so that is like no slouch of a ranking, right? Like it's funny. Even then, there's probably room for him to go up some in that. We'll see how it goes. You got to get eyes on him in person to be able to see that. But what do you think he brings to the Wildcats offense on the field?
I think the biggest thing is versatility. He can play in line as your sort of typical tight end. He could play as an H-back if you needed him to. He can line up as a wide receiver, and that's something that, he had told me that K-State was sort of mentioning that they wanted to play him out in the slot as well. And I think that the biggest thing is he gives you that versatility that modern day tight ends give you. You look at some of the best tight ends in football, they're all versatile. They're not just lining up with their hand in the dirt, blocking someone. And, Linkon Cure can block. But he can also, run the routes. He can do a lot of the stuff that you look for. And I think, as you mentioned, it still sort of feels like there's a lot more room to grow, which is
Right.
incredibly impressive because he's ranked as the second best tight end in the class and,
Right.
a good tight end class as well. And
Yeah, it's a
we're,
great
we're
tight.
talking, yeah, we're talking about a guy who could still grow. You don't see that often from highly ranked recruits where we're still going, their ceiling is untapped because his ceiling is untapped. A year in college with college coaching, we could be talking about a completely different player, but he's also a guy who is going to come in and play immediately for K-State, and he probably would
Yeah.
have played immediately for any program that he chose.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that one of the things to me that will allow him to play early is that blocking. I know that he's talked about being able to start his career as kind of a big wide receiver and then continue to fill out and then move a little bit more in line and move all around. But his ability to block, and you see it on film, is impressive. And I think that he could help you create some mismatches on the outside and blocking and being able to do perimeter blocking. It's something that I feel like you never really bring it up in these videos or in evaluations or when you're hyping up a prospect. But then when you get to the nitty gritty of being able to get a guy on the field early, what do we hear from coaches in spring ball and in fall ball all the time? Oh, I can't trust that guy to protect the quarterback in a running back's case, or he's not able to really hold up at the point of attack on the perimeter. That stuff matters. And I think that he's going to be able to do that from day one against smaller players out on the perimeter. So I think that he'll be a real asset there. And I think that the sky is the limit as far as his development and kind of his growth as a tight end prospect overall. But it is a huge day for Kansas State and Chris Kleiman landing Linkon Cure, the number 2 tight end in the entire country, the number 54 player in the nation right now. That's going to do it for us for this video. For Kevin Fielder of emailonline.com, I am Greg Smith, and we'll talk to you guys later.